She stood in the doorway of her classroom, arms crossed, staring at the young boy who had just told her he wanted to become a school superintendent one day. The other students had already gone silent, waiting for her response. Mrs. Patricia Henderson's lips curved into a smirk before she let out a loud, mocking laugh that echoed through the entire room. The boy's hands trembled as he clutched his worn notebook against his chest. He had just turned 12 years old, and in that moment, something inside him broke, but something else ignited. 23 years later, that same woman would sit across from him in a conference room, her face drained of color, as he introduced himself as the new superintendent of the very school district where she still taught. Before we continue with this remarkable journey of resilience and redemption, let us know where you're watching from. Are you in New York, London, Los Angeles, Manchester, Chicago, or somewhere else entirely? Drop your city in the comments below. This story happened in a small district in Georgia, but its message resonates across every border and every community. Marcus Wellington was born in 1989 in a neighborhood where dreams were supposed to stay small. His mother worked double shifts at a textile factory while his father drove trucks across state lines, sometimes disappearing for weeks at a time. They lived in a two-bedroom apartment that smelled perpetually of boiled vegetables and hope. His mother used to tell him that education was the only inheritance she could give him, the only treasure that nobody could steal. She made him read every night, even when the electricity bill went unpaid, and they had to use candlelight. By the time Marcus entered 6th grade at Riverside Middle School, he had developed a reputation. Teachers noticed him. He asked questions that made them uncomfortable. He challenged textbooks when the information seemed incomplete. He stayed after school to help younger students with their homework, organizing informal tutoring sessions in the cafeteria. The principal at the time, Mr. Davies, had once told him he had leadership potential. Those words planted a seed. Mrs. Patricia Henderson had been teaching English at Riverside Middle School for 18 years when Marcus entered her class. She had tenure, seniority, and a reputation for being tough. Some said she was effective. Others whispered she was cruel. She came from a family of educators, third-generation teachers who believed in traditional discipline and maintaining order. She had certain ideas about which students belonged in advanced placement tracks and which ones needed to accept more realistic limitations. Marcus walked into her classroom that September morning with his notebook filled with careful handwriting and ambitious plans. He had written down goals: graduate high school with honors, attend college, earn a master's degree, work in education administration, become a superintendent by age 35. He had researched what it took. He had mapped out the entire journey. When Mrs. Henderson announced that students would share their future career aspirations as an icebreaker activity, Marcus felt his heart pound with excitement. One by one, students stood up. Jessica wanted to be a veterinarian. Tyler wanted to join the military. Amanda dreamed of becoming a nurse. When Marcus stood, he cleared his throat and spoke with careful pronunciation, the way his mother had taught him. "I want to become a school superintendent," he said. "I want to lead a school district and make sure every student gets the resources and support they need to succeed, regardless of their background or zip code." The classroom went silent. Mrs. Henderson stopped writing on the board. She turned slowly, chalk still in hand, and looked at Marcus with an expression he would never forget. Her eyebrows raised, her mouth twisted into something between disbelief and amusement. "A superintendent," she repeated, drawing out each syllable. "You want to be a superintendent?" Marcus nodded, feeling suddenly vulnerable but standing his ground. "Yes, ma'am." What happened next would echo through the next 2 decades of his life. Mrs. Henderson laughed. It was not a polite chuckle or a gentle correction. It was a full, theatrical laugh that filled every corner of the room. Other students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked down at their desks. A few began to snicker, taking permission from her reaction. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "do you understand what a superintendent actually does? Do you know what kind of education and connections that requires? Those positions go to people with doctorates, with decades of experience, with networks and resources. They don't go to. She paused, letting her eyes travel deliberately from his second-hand sneakers to his faded backpack. They don't go to kids from your kind of background. You need to set realistic goals. Maybe aim for something more attainable. There's nothing wrong with trade work or service positions. Not everyone is cut out for leadership at that level. The words landed like physical blows. Marcus felt his classmates' eyes boring into him. He felt heat rise up his neck and spread across his face. But underneath the humiliation, something hardened. He looked directly at Mrs. Henderson and spoke in a voice steadier than he felt. "I will become a superintendent," he said quietly, "and when I do, I'll remember this moment." Mrs. Henderson waved her hand dismissively. "Sit down, Marcus. Let's move on to someone with reasonable ambitions." He sat down, but he did not move on. That night, he went home and taped a piece of paper to the wall next to his bed. On it, he wrote, "Superintendent by 35. Prove her wrong." His mother found him crying at the kitchen table hours later, and when he told her what happened, she held his face in her work-worn hands. "Baby, some people's limitations become their weapons," she said. "They try to cut down others to their own size. But you listen to me. Her doubt is not your destiny. You hear me. Her words don't get to define your future. Only you do." Marcus carried that moment with him like a stone in his pocket, heavy and constant. When high school guidance counselors suggested community college instead of university, he thought of Mrs. Henderson's laugh. When he applied to 15 universities and got rejected from 12, he thought of her words. When he finally got accepted to Georgia State University with a partial scholarship, he worked 3 part-time jobs to cover the rest, thinking of her every time his feet ached after a double shift. He graduated with a degree in education and social policy with a 3.8 GPA. He worked as a teacher for 2 years at an underfunded elementary school, where he stayed late every night tutoring students who reminded him of his younger self. He applied to graduate school and got accepted to Harvard's education leadership program. His mother cried when he called her with the news. His father, who had never been good with emotions, sent him a text that said simply, "Proud of you, son." At Harvard, Marcus studied under professors who had shaped national education policy. He wrote his thesis on educational equity in under-resourced school districts. He analyzed data, conducted field research, and proposed systemic solutions. He graduated with his master's degree and immediately began working toward his doctorate while taking a position as an assistant principal in a struggling school in Massachusetts. He was 28 when he became a full principal. The school had a reputation for chaos and low performance. Within 3 years, Marcus had transformed it. He implemented mentorship programs, secured grant funding for arts and technology programs, built partnerships with local businesses, and created a culture where every student felt seen. Test scores rose, graduation rates increased, teacher retention improved. The school became a case study in educational turnaround. At 32, he was recruited as deputy superintendent for a mid-sized district in North Carolina. He spent 2 years learning every aspect of district operations, from budgets to board relations to community engagement. He built relationships with every stakeholder. He listened more than he spoke. He learned how power moved through systems and how to navigate bureaucracy without losing sight of students. When the superintendent position opened in his home district in Georgia, the district where Riverside Middle School still operated, Marcus applied. He did not tell anyone his personal connection. He went through 6 rounds of interviews. He presented a comprehensive vision for the district's next 5 years. He answered questions about budget constraints, academic standards, teacher support, and community partnerships. The school board deliberated for 3 weeks before making their decision. Marcus Wellington was appointed superintendent of Riverside County School District at age 35, exactly on schedule according to the timeline he had written in 6th grade. His first official day was a Monday in August. The district organized a meeting for all school principals and senior teachers to meet their new superintendent. Mrs. Patricia Henderson, now in her 36th year of teaching, still at Riverside Middle School, received the memo like everyone else. She barely glanced at the name. She had seen superintendents come and go. She had outlasted 5 of them. She walked into the district conference room that morning, expecting another bureaucrat with empty promises. She took her usual seat near the back, next to colleagues she had known for decades. The room filled with nervous energy. A new superintendent always meant changes, and changes meant uncertainty. The district's HR director stood at the front of the room and began introductions. "We are incredibly fortunate," she said, "to have recruited someone with Dr. Wellington's credentials and track record. He comes to us from North Carolina, where he served as deputy superintendent, but some of you may be interested to know that he actually grew up right here in our district. He attended our schools as a student. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Marcus Wellington." The door at the side of the room opened. Marcus walked in wearing a dark suit, carrying a leather folder, his shoulders back and his head high. He was no longer the skinny 12-year-old in second-hand shoes. He was a 35-year-old man with a doctorate from Harvard, with years of proven leadership, with a vision for education that had been forged in the fire of every doubt he had ever faced. He walked to the front of the room, and his eyes swept across the gathered educators. When his gaze landed on Mrs. Henderson, he paused, just for a moment. Their eyes met, and in that instant recognition crashed over her like a wave. Her face went pale. Her hand flew to her mouth. She knew exactly who he was. Marcus continued to the podium and set down his folder. When he spoke, his voice was calm, professional, warm. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to start by telling you a story about why this position means so much to me personally." The room went quiet. Mrs. Henderson's hands gripped the edge of the table. 23 years ago, I was a student in this district. I was a 6th grader with big dreams and very little reason to believe they could come true. I grew up in a neighborhood where college seemed like a fantasy and leadership positions seemed reserved for other people's children. But I had a mother who believed in me, and I had something else. I had teachers who told me my dreams were impossible. A few people in the room shifted uncomfortably. Marcus smiled gently. "I want to be clear. I am not here for revenge. I am not here to call anyone out or settle old scores, but I am here because of what happened in those classrooms. When someone told me I couldn't, when someone laughed at my ambitions, when someone suggested I needed to be more realistic about my limitations, something crystallized inside me. I decided that if I ever got the chance, I would build a district where no student ever had to hear those words again." He paused and let his eyes find Mrs. Henderson again. She was staring at him with tears streaming down her face. "I want every educator in this district to understand something fundamental. Our words matter. Our belief in students matters. When we laugh at a child's dreams, we are not being realistic. We are not preparing them for disappointment. We are potentially destroying something precious that might never recover. When we tell students from certain neighborhoods or certain backgrounds that leadership is not for them, we are perpetuating the very inequities our profession should be dismantling." The room was completely silent now. Every person was hanging on his words. "Here is what I envision for our district. I want us to become a place where every single student, regardless of race, economic status, family situation, or zip code, walks into school believing that their biggest dreams are not only possible but expected. I want our teachers trained in culturally responsive pedagogy. I want our curriculum to reflect the diversity of our student body. I want our discipline policies to be equitable. I want our advanced placement courses accessible to everyone who wants to challenge themselves. I want our schools to be places where potential is recognized everywhere, not just where it is expected." He continued outlining his vision for the next hour, covering academic programs, teacher support initiatives, community partnerships, and budget priorities. He answered questions with specificity and clarity. He demonstrated command of data and intimate knowledge of the district's challenges. When the meeting ended, educators approached him with handshakes and expressions of cautious optimism. Mrs. Henderson did not approach. She sat frozen in her chair as the room emptied around her. Finally, when only a handful of people remained, Marcus walked over to her. He pulled out the chair next to her and sat down. "Mrs. Henderson," he said quietly. She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Marcus," she whispered, I remember what I said to you." He nodded. "I know you do. I am so sorry." Her voice broke. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I said those things." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke with the same calm authority he had used at the podium. "I thought a lot about this moment over the years. I imagined it differently depending on the day. Sometimes I imagined walking in here and watching you realize who I had become and just walking away. Sometimes I imagined a grand speech about how you had tried to destroy me and failed. But the truth is, Mrs. Henderson, I did not get here despite you. In some strange way, I got here partly because of you." She looked confused and devastated. "I am not saying what you did was okay." Marcus continued. "It was not okay. It was cruel, and it was rooted in biases you may not have even recognized in yourself. But it taught me something crucial. It taught me that systems that allow teachers to crush student dreams are broken systems. It taught me that leadership means protecting the most vulnerable voices in the room. It taught me that I never wanted any child to experience what I experienced." Mrs. Henderson wiped her eyes. "What happens now? Are you going to fire me?" Marcus shook his head. "No, but I am going to ask something of you. I am implementing a new professional development program for all teachers in the district. It focuses on equity, implicit bias, and the power of educator expectations. I am asking you to be part of the first cohort, and I am asking you specifically to share your perspective on how teachers can unintentionally harm students, even when they think they are being realistic or helpful." She looked at him with something between shock and gratitude. "You want me to talk about what I did to you? I want you to talk about what you learned. I want you to help other educators avoid the mistakes you made. I think that would be far more valuable than removing you from the classroom. People can change, Mrs. Henderson. Systems can change, but only if we are honest about where we have failed." Over the next 3 years, Marcus Wellington transformed the district. Test scores rose across demographics. The achievement gap narrowed. Teacher satisfaction increased. More students from underrepresented backgrounds enrolled in AP courses. College acceptance rates improved. The district gained national recognition for its equity initiatives. Mrs. Henderson became one of the program's most powerful voices. She spoke at teacher trainings about her own biases and blind spots. She shared the story of Marcus without using his name, describing how her words had nearly derailed a student's trajectory. She became an advocate for culturally responsive teaching and high expectations for all students. On the 3rd anniversary of Marcus becoming superintendent, the district organized a celebration. Community members, teachers, students, and families filled the auditorium. Speeches were given about the district's transformation. When Marcus took the stage for his remarks, he asked Mrs. Henderson to join him. The room buzzed with curiosity. She walked up slowly, clearly nervous. Marcus handed her the microphone. "Some of you know," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "that Dr. Wellington and I have history. When he was a student in my class over 2 decades ago, I did something I will regret for the rest of my life. When he shared his dream of becoming a superintendent, I laughed at him. I told him it was unrealistic. I suggested he aim lower. I let my own limited vision and unexamined biases nearly crush a brilliant young person's aspirations." The room was silent. She continued, tears flowing freely now. "Standing here today, working in a district led by the man whose dreams I mocked, I have learned something profound. Education is not about sorting students into predetermined categories. It is about removing barriers and opening doors. Dr. Wellington could have held what I did against me forever. Instead, he gave me the chance to grow, to learn, and to help make sure no teacher ever makes the mistakes I made. That is true leadership. That is what transformational education looks like. She turned to Marcus. Thank you for proving me wrong. Thank you for becoming exactly who you said you would be. And thank you for teaching me that it is never too late to do better. The auditorium erupted in applause. Marcus and Mrs. Henderson embraced, and in that moment, something came full circle. Not revenge, but redemption. Not bitterness, but bridge. Building. Not the triumph of one person over another, but the triumph of a vision over the limitations others tried to impose. Marcus Wellington is still serving as superintendent today. The district has become a model for educational equity and student-centered leadership. Mrs. Henderson retired last year, but she continues to volunteer as a mentor for new teachers, sharing her story as a cautionary tale and a testament to the power of growth. This story reminds us that the words we speak to young people echo far beyond the moment we speak them. They can plant seeds of doubt or seeds of determination. They can close doors or open them. And sometimes, those young people we underestimate come back, not to tear down the system that failed them, but to rebuild it so it never fails another child the same way. If this story resonated with you, share it with an educator, a parent, or a young person who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling us about a teacher who believed in you or a moment when someone's doubt became your motivation. Let us know where you are watching from and what this story means to you. Because in the end, this is not just Marcus Wellington's story. This is the story of every student who was told they were not enough, and every educator who learned that our highest calling is to see potential everywhere we look, especially in the places where others see none.